Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Great to meet you, Gidi.
That feels really genuine and organic being recorded right now, right?
Absolutely.
Where are you based right now?
I am not quite in downtown Manhattan, but live uptown with my family.
Um, I'm from Rise.
Mhm.
We're an edtech company, which means huge scale, tons of real-time decision making, like billions of decisions a day, and we are heavily reliant right now on Aerospike. So it's
Yeah.
like part of our core business is using Aerospike in so many different places.
I actually have a working theory. Both that's what's interested me when for my time at MongoDB and now a time at Aerospike, which is that ad tech in many ways has always been kind of at the bleeding edge of like what databases need to sort of kind of rise to the occasion
Hmm.
for. And so it is not surprising to me that, a number of the founders at MongoDB had experience at DoubleClick, and took some of those exact same pains and turned it into a product. And it also did not surprise me, especially I was kind of attracted to it and looking at Aerospike to see, you know, where do you fit on the spectrum in terms of supporting ed tech? Because
Hmm.
the use cases has been for decades now has been really just kind of at that edge of what systems can and need to do.
You mentioned you came from MongoDB.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
that's a big change.
yeah.
What was like what has drawn you into Earthspike?
I'm an engineer, kind of by academic background, and I've always been attracted to the um, the use cases that are really what I would consider like the most demanding or challenging from an engineering perspective. And databases are in many cases like at the kind of the upper echelon of that. And so, what had attracted me to MongoDB was this idea of a developer experience that could be improved and enabled through a better designed, database architecture. And both for that first day experience, but also for that, let's say that 2 year or 3 year experience where, you think you want to be able to scale and grow. And to me, Aerospike was one of those companies that was a little bit under the radar because they'd
Hmm.
been used for so many years by companies who were applying AI, but they weren't even really calling it AI. It hadn't become this sort of kind of buzz phrase that it is nowadays. And so, um, I had a chance to look under the hood, take a look at the architecture because the source code's available, and really kind of dive into it, and saw many of the characteristics I really appreciated in MongoDB, but with this incredible focus on what I thought was going to be a critical part of the future, right? Which is
Hmm.
real time decisioning at scale, and I really felt that Aerospike stood out from the rest of the pack in that regard.
I want to focus on the non-AI features and things that you see that are on the roadmap and are crucial for the next year for
Yeah.
Aerospike.
I remember a number of years back when, for example, vector databases started coming out, and in certain respects, there was like one kind of key capability in there, right? Obviously, like vector search, but in many cases, that technology uh, was missing all of the other aspects of I'll call it a traditional database, but really an essential enterprise database experience that everyone really needs, right? And so that is high availability, durability, security, and consistent performance. And what I've kind of learned through my experience over the years is that you can talk to new use cases, new capabilities, but if you don't have the not only the fundamentals, but if you're not advancing the fundamentals all the time, then you're really you don't have the right roadmap, the right table set for the future.
Hmm.
And so one of the big features we had released in 8.0 for Aerospike was, for example, multi-record transaction support, right? And that was a key capability that built on prior work. Um,
The other side of the question is AI. How you guys are tackling UI use cases, what use cases are even relevant to be used with Aerospike, and what the future holds in your roadmap.
I think where our position is a bit different than other companies out there, right? Are first, it's based on, we feel really confident. We feel confident that the future of AI is really based on this real-time access to data, right? And that's kind of critical for a couple key components. One is because we know freshness matters, and we know that timeliness to customers is critical, whether that is a human customer or an agent. But we also know that, and then this, Gidi, this might be something you've experienced, but I've heard from other customers,
Hmm.
is that fast data access doesn't just mean that you get the job done faster. It actually creates a window where you can uh, potentially perform a richer sort of interpretation of the data, right? Or you can, do more analysis, right? It gives you a bigger window of opportunity to provide the best action, the best result, the best insight, the best recommendation, right? And in a future where I think speed is going to be essential, but also this idea of being adaptive along the way. I feel really strong about Aerospike and its strength. So, specifically, we're looking to build on a lot of the predictive AI use cases we already support. So things like, recommendation engines, fraud prevention, feature stores. What we're hearing from customers is not that they want to wholesale, drop in something like semantic search and, swap out everything else, but they're looking to layer in these new technologies along the way. And so we're investing heavily in those areas kind of on two fronts. The first is, and this is something that is probably for this group to hear maybe first, right? Is that we are, investing in kind of foundational vector data type support within the database itself, not as a standalone product, not as a sort of sidecar, which we hear often in the rest of the market, but really making vector search a kind of foundational capability and data type within the product. And we've got a strong roadmap towards the rest of the year that we're aiming to deliver on that. And when I say deliver, it's not just the kind of common capabilities that people are looking for. It's also at scale. And when we're talking about scale, Gidi, we're really talking about like the scale that we know our customers operate at, right? It's just, millions of transactions per second, right? And like just kind of, incredibly low tail latencies, and confidence in the predictability of the system. The the other side of this is we know that having this as a foundational component of the database, it isn't that doesn't necessarily give us the entry point for every customer that they're looking for, and that's why we're looking at partnering with and building integrations with many of the popular frameworks out there, right? So the LangGraphs or the LangChains or the MemZeros of the world, right? We've even had folks kind of voice interest in things like LM Cache. We want to make it dead simple, not only for developers to store and access sort of AI native data, but we also want to make it so that agents that they're building on can readily access, inspect, interrogate the system, and work with the data that's there. So we've
Hmm.
already rolled out some of those support earlier this year, and we're going to continue to build on that investment through the end of the year.
Hmm. I see. Um, Couple of things I can think about. First, regarding, let's say it's very popular right now, MCP, to allow agents to get this data from Aerospike very easily. Is that something you're actually thinking about?
So it's not just something we're thinking about. We already have support for it. We've actually built it into our Voyager client experience. So one of the things we've recognized and we heard from our clients was, we need to have a sort of desktop or laptop experience that gives not only humans but agents sort of visibility into the system itself. And so we have a public preview available now for the Voyager product. And as part of that rollout, you have the ability to configure, and I would say safely configure, MCP so that so that you can start using many of the popular language models as well as agents against that system. But the other part of this too is really benchmarking our SDKs and our clients against how agents solve problems. And so a big part of our effort, whether it's in Aerospike Academy, documentation, or even just, like the, release notes content, right? Documentation that we put into the actual code itself, we are not only measuring that against human feedback, but we're also kind of measuring it against the ability for people's agents, even products like Gemini, to be able to work with the system, right? And make smart recommendations about how to develop against Aerospike.
The other thing I want to ask, it's for the people here in Tel Aviv, if you can create an imaginative example of how Aerospike fits into the AI infrastructure or ecosystem to make things clear on how things like fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen kind of predictive AI in particular kind of evolve over the years from things like shallow models to mid-depth to, more complex or richer deep model support. And so, we want to get to a future where, not only do you feel like you can comfortably explore the science and kind of performance of those kind of models, but that the system can be adaptive enough to allow you to leverage those models over time. And so, the example being that, using fraud detection as an example, right? We have customers right now, we're trying to figure out what's the best way performance and reliability wise to make that jump from statically defined rules to, kind of maybe integrating some of their machine learning capabilities, and then maybe even turning over the keys to some extent to an agent kind of orchestrator out there, right? We don't want to be we don't want to sell or compel anyone to say, well, we're only in the deep model space, or we're only in the ML space. We want to be the partner who's going to help you run and reason about the performance and kind of, and efficiency of all three of those over time. And we think that that's the best approach because ultimately, it's going to be, I think the future is going to be a little bit of a mix and match, right? There isn't going to be we're, just tearing down old ways and just building up new ways. I think, for these real-time use cases, we're going to see a slow sort of adjustment and adoption over time. And so, this idea that you can spin up Aerospike locally, you can talk with an agent locally. It has the knowledge to be able to create an appropriate, data set for you, and a set of queries that would support something like a, static rule-based model for, let's say, fraud detection. But as you start to progress and say, well, I'm interested in integrating an ML model, or I'm interested in turning the keys over to an agent on some level, right? It is there with you both on your desktop and then the cloud, helping you on that journey, right? And that's gonna, the benefit there obviously is that, ultimately our customers are going to be able to evaluate and validate they're going to be able to validate that performance and the benefits. But they also are going to be able to do that within the context of a single infrastructure or single architecture. They're not going to feel that switching cost of kind of pulling in the next cool thing out there. And so, we want to, we want to make sure that experience really can happen end to end for all of our customers. And that's a big part of the mission over the next year.
I think I have one last question. What is like the top thing that you're most excited about for next year in Aerospike?
I think we have the real opportunity to be the fastest, the fastest vector cache and potentially vector store, bar none. I think we have I think we have the institutional knowledge. I think we've got the right roadmap. We're already seeing a world where memory is getting outstripped by large language models. Contexts are growing and growing, and companies are scrambling to figure out how to pack more in what they already have, but also how to intelligently spill to kind of lower levels. And I know you've spent a lot of time with Aerospike. Like Aerospike is kind of it can teach a master class on that. And so I am, obviously I'm optimistic. I'm an eternal optimist, but I am excited about, maybe the biggest thing is not just having a kind of core vector capability,
Mhm.
but really one that separates us, us from the rest of the competition, and not just for, some, benchmark glory, but because I truly believe it's going to fundamentally change the pace of interaction that systems can have with each other. And that's agent to agent, but also human in the loop types of interactions.
I really enjoyed our last few minutes, and I think I
Yeah,
learned a lot, and I
I
hope it will be beneficial for everyone.
I did as well. It was great connecting with you, and
Thank you.
look forward to kind of talking more about it in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been
Okay.
a pleasure.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Gidi.
Yeah. Have a good
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Bye bye.